And if you're a little bit sleepy, then here's the summary of the talk. You can watch these pink slides and then have a little snooze, a little nap, and then wake up at the end. And if you like it, or if you think you like it, then clap. That's fine. I'm happy with that. I don't care. So it's this. So we need to rethink platform fundamentals in terms of flow and innovation. Because often the way the platforms have been, I don't like the word platform, I'll be honest. Like, I think I say that in a slide later. The way the platform is seen is just like a blob of technology and it seems like a cost. But actually rethink it in terms of flow of value, so shorten time to value and so on, and also then innovation. Use gardening as a mental model. Who actually does gardening? Who knows about that? Planting things and watch them grow and all that stuff. I know people. Sometimes it's like no one. It's like just a tumbleweed. So use gardening as a mental model, like foraging, harvesting, and recombining. We'll explore that in a bit. Think about the social dynamics for the platform as an innovation engine. Like don't just think of the technology parts and the structure and that, but think about how people are actually going to contribute. And then we'll look at some real-world examples of platforms as innovation engines. Did anyone expect to get a different talk? This is the talk I'm going to give. I'm happy to negotiate, but this is the one I've prepared. Okay, so let's think about platforms providing rapid harvested curated innovation. So here's a typical story. The organization questions the value of internal platforms as somehow expensive or like a cost center. This is quite cool. Who's seen that? That happens all the time, right? All the time. What we see as well is a fair number of organizations come to us with this particular problem, which is they got multiple parallel, uncoordinated innovation activities that are financially inefficient. We'll dive into that in a bit, but this is also pretty common. The less typical story is this. The organization must report on effective digital asset usage by industry sector for fiscal compliance. Has anyone seen this? Has anyone had to deal with this thing? Just raise your hand. Let me see. One, two, three. Okay, interesting. So maybe we can get some real world examples from you on that. That would be interesting to see. Ultimately, we're trying to elevate the role of, platform engineering, but also kind of internal platforms, particularly when they're run as a product. All right, so let's look at how rethinking platform fundamentals in terms of flow and innovation. I should say at this point, given that this is a product team meetup, I'm not a product person particularly. I don't have a product background, although I think looking at the principles in the book that I co-authored, Team Topologies, there's definitely product thinking in there. And actually, this is slightly off topic, but when I met, who knows Melissa Perry? Put your hand up if you know about Melissa Perry. So she's quite influential in product. She wrote a book called Mind the Build Trap, and more recently a book called Product Operations. And so we were chatting at a conference, two conferences recently. We were in a taxi on the way back to the hotel, and we were talking about parallels. And so I went on her podcast back end of last year, and then I read her book. Well, I was reading her book for the podcast, and I was like, oh my goodness. The ideas in her book are basically the same ideas, or many of the same ideas that I've got in my book. We're coming at it from two different perspectives, me from technology, principally, and she from product. But the intent is very, very similar. So we will actually do some work together around the overlap between the two books. I don't know when, because I don't have a huge amount of time, but it might be later this year, it might be next year. But there's some stuff coming in this space, like me and Melissa working together on the kind of combined ideas. So yeah, I think platform is a really bad word. We put it in the Team Topologies book, which was published 6 years ago now, because most people think of a platform, at least in digital product stuff, as like a blob of technology. It's not such a good term. It does make sense in terms of a term where you're thinking about it's a stable foundation to build other things on. You don't need to know what's underneath. So we're doing some work. We had a workshop together with my colleagues Noah and Daniel. Anyway, Daniel's there at the back this afternoon with a company here, and I shared a perspective about this. Imagine you're walking in the countryside of the mountain or something across like marshy or boggy ground. Sometimes, certainly in the UK, we get like a boardwalk, like a wooden boardwalk across that area. Someone put a nice, it means it's easier to walk across. So in that sense, a platform means that you don't need to care what's underneath, right? It's an abstraction, which means that you can actually more quickly walk across that thing. So in that sense of platform makes a lot of sense. We're able to move more quickly. We don't need to worry about the stuff, the dirty details underneath, right? So it's all right, but I don't think it's the best word. It's the word we've got. It's the word we've got at the moment. I'm sure another word will come at some point soon. But we shouldn't be thinking about building big blobs of technology. That doesn't help. Technology is almost certainly going to be involved, fine, but like that shouldn't be the aim. Technology is there to help achieve something. I think we shouldn't be aiming to build shared services. We shouldn't be aiming, the aim shouldn't be to provide services that are shared across multiple different parts of the organization. That might be a side effect, but that shouldn't be the aim. It has in the past been the aim, but I don't think it should be the aim now. The aim should not be centralization either. Like there's ways to use internal platforms where you might have, I don't know, like 5 different, product lines or P&Ls or something. You might have multiple different platforms, and in each of those lines, we shouldn't be aiming just to have a single platform that somehow magically meets the needs of all of those. Like, you might end up with something that's centralized if we've done it well, but that shouldn't be the aim. So it's a bit of a nuance maybe, but I think it's quite important. Traditionally, certainly for IT, a platform was like, we protect the production or the live environment. We're the guardians of the truth, or we're the guardians of the business, and those cowboy developers won't get anywhere near it. I've been a cowboy developer, I can say that. I've also been on the operations side. But I don't think we should see it like that either. I don't think we should aim to reduce costs via sharing the services. I don't think the aim should be to reduce costs. I mean, that's the driver a lot of the time from CFO or from budget pressure, but I don't think that feels like it shouldn't be the aim. It might be a side effect, happy side effect, but I don't think it should be the main aim. Let's step into our DeLorean, take a trip back in time. You know what this is, right? Please tell me you know what this is. This is Back to the Future. So go back to 2013, and I was in a travel retail organization in the UK. That organization, at the time and still now, retails about half of all the rail tickets sold online in the UK, which is quite a lot. There's like 70 million of us, and we do a lot of rail travel and so on and so on. So there's quite a lot. I think it's at the time back in 2013, that was transacting £2 billion a year. So that's what, 4 billion New Zealand dollars a year. So it's a fair amount. It's flowing through this. It's actually flowing through an old VB6 component, but that's a separate thing. All right, so I was there, and there was lots of stuff happening. This is pre-cloud, although we were preparing to move into Amazon AWS, but at the time we still had data centers in different parts of the UK. So it's like a point of transition where we're helping the organization to kind of adopt new ways of working. But there was lots of disagreements or differences of perspective, let's say, between different parts of the organization. Almost like kind of fighting about who should do what the responsibility should be. And as part of this, I ended up writing like a rage blog post. I got in a rage and I wrote a blog post. It's like, how can we make it better? And it ended up being quite useful. So Netflix used it to help Netflix understand how to arrange their teams and technology. And they were already pretty advanced. So like to realize that they were finding it useful was quite handy. I think it's quite humbling, I suppose. And Condé Nast, the big information publisher, used it, and a bunch of other places. One of the large consultancies stole the ideas and didn't attribute it properly. I won't name and shame, but it was one of the big 5 consultancies in the world, and so on. So anyway, it became quite popular, and we ended up publishing it in a website which is still there called DevOps Topologies. If you search for that online, you'll find it. A series of Venn diagrams effectively say, well, what are some ways in which development teams, software development teams, and what were they called, operations teams, how are some effective ways in which they can work together? one of those patterns, which we ended up calling Type 3, Ops as Infrastructure as a Service or Platform. So that's like an early use of that word platform in the IT space, at least. And we're characterizing like this. So we've got the yellow circle is development, people developing software. And then there's operations in blue. And there's an implied kind of sort of boundary here, because in this particular case, operations is providing something like as a service. We're going to enable the developers to run their applications on an infrastructure, if you like, but we're empowering them to do it. Like, this is pretty obvious these days, but like back then, it was not at all common to see the value in doing it like that. Anyway, so that's that. And then there's an interesting phrase here. It probably helps to treat operations as a team who simply provides the elastic infrastructure on which applications are deployed and run. Like, that's into providing something rather than gatekeeping or running things for people. So some of this stuff might seem super obvious, but like 2013, not obvious at all. Fast forward a little bit to 2015. Who's used Pivotal Cloud Foundry at all? Has anyone used that? This is quite a technical underpinning thing, right? So, but this was a what's the right word? It was ahead of its time. So back in 2015, this was doing stuff which only now some organizations are starting to adopt. It was back then, it was talked about, it was phrased itself as a leading enterprise platform as a service powered by a cloud foundry. And there's a really interesting phrase in the middle of this. This is a document from them which has disappeared from the internet, but I found a copy thanks to Archive. With an operational model that provides a clean separation of developer and operator functions, blah, 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 experience for development teams. Like, the idea of providing an experience as a key part of the platform feels really fundamental. That's why this was well ahead of its time. Whereas now, everyone's talking about developer experience, but this is literally that's like 12 years later. So they were 12 years ahead of the time, ahead of the curve. And we were influenced by this. I remember when I first read this, I was like, why on earth would you want to have a clean separation of developer and operator experience? Surely they should be just working together. But actually, there's a lot of value in thinking about who should do what and what should be aligned to a particular mission and so on and so on. And then fast forward to 2019, Team Topologies book was published. We've now sold over 200,000 copies worldwide across 5 languages. I think there's another language coming soon. The second edition of this book actually publishes in September this year, so almost exactly 6 years to the day when the first one was published. And what we've done is we've corrected 1 or 2 little things that were actually incorrect, but only 1 or 2 little things. And then we've got some case studies, including a case study from TradeMe. Anyone work for TradeMe here? Hands? Anyone has worked for? Cool. So we'll chat afterwards, right? Make sure we chat afterwards. Thank you very much. It's nice to include we've got a case study from every continent in the world apart from Antarctica, because the penguins are too busy dealing with Trump's tariffs. Sorry. The subtitle has actually shifted. So originally it was organizing business and technology teams for fast flow, but what we've realized, based on some of the case studies from organizations like TradeMe and other places, is that actually it's more than just about organizing teams. It's about organizing capability, organizing kind of product effectively, like where we think about product boundaries and a bunch of other things. So actually the new subtitle is organizing business and technology for fast flow of value. A slight tweak, but effectively it's broadened. What we've realized is that the patterns are actually way broader than just thinking about organizing teams. And that's why I feel able to speak at a product thing, because the way that people are using it is definitely way broader than just organizing teams. There's an interesting concept or phrase that we came up with in the book called thinnest viable platform. It sounds very much like minimum viable product, and that's deliberate. We wanted it to resonate or to kind of rhyme with that phrase. But this is about making sure we don't have We don't just get technologists to go out there and build a massive, great blob of technology. We want to keep it as thin as possible. So it's the smaller set of like APIs, documentation tools needed to accelerate teams developing modern software systems. I mean, to be honest, these days we wouldn't even talk about developing modern software services. Like, it's a smaller set of stuff which accelerates teams using that thing. So it could even be like a wiki page, or it could be it could be something where the context is legal services or accident and emergency in a hospital, something like that. And we're seeing people use these patterns well outside of technology, like completely outside of an IT and technology context. But anyway, that's what it says in the book. And it's an important concept. Like, what's the smallest amount of stuff that we can put in place that is going to accelerate delivery of value in teams that use this thing that we're building that we might call a platform? It's in a viable platform. We're not trying to build something massive. We're trying to keep it as just the smallest amount possible. But it's actually quite a different concept from MVP. MVP, I mean, there's lots of debate about that. I'm not going to get into a debate about MVP now. I'm not going to take that bait. But anyway, like that, it's more like MVP is more like a particular stage in time, let's say, and then something changes afterwards. This particular, if you get the thinnest viable platform, you put that in. Potentially, if the context doesn't change, that thinnest viable platform might remain there forever. If the context doesn't change, it might get bigger, it might get smaller, but like it's a slightly different thing to MVP. But anyway, similar kind of concept. And then fast forward a little bit more to 2024. We've got the State of DevOps report, the State of Platform Engineering report, and they talk about kind of platform engineering in particular, and also kind of mention how Team Topologies provides some heuristics or clues for thinking through how to work with internal platforms, particularly treating them as a product, or at least using product thinking and product principles to help shape the value, rather than it just being a load of techies building stuff from a Jira ticket queue. We're actually shaping it using like a product roadmap, and guess what? We're actually going to talk to some users. IT people are going to talk to some users. Oh, who would have thought, right? And thinking about like experience and net promoter score or whatever else, and whatever comes after NPS, like ways to sense whether what we're building is actually useful, or is actually what people need. I mean, these ideas have been fairly well established for 20 years since SaaS came along as a product discipline. So we're using that stuff internally. So a platform should accelerate the flow of value by reducing cognitive load for other teams. This is the framing of internal platforms, which I think it's fair to say Team Topologies either introduced or strongly emphasized. And it really helps to give a more useful framing for this stuff. It's not about block technology, it's not about sharing services, it's about value acceleration, partly by reducing cognitive load. And therefore, whatever the technology looks like, whether it looks like a shift from data center to cloud, or whether it looks like a shift from humans typing codes to agentic AI, it doesn't really matter what the technology context is. It always relates to the context that humans are working in. So and that's an important point. It's actually got a very important human context, a human thread to what we're doing. Like, it connects through to the human experience effectively. And this is a phrase which, unfortunately, we did not put in the Team Topologies book, which I wish we had, but anyway, we came up with it later. A platform is a curated experience for engineers who are the customers of the platform. We're using that word customers, or maybe value consumer, but just framing it like that completely changes really how our starting point for thinking about kind of internal platforms in an organization. Like, it's definitely like a product. It's a product-ish, even if it's not a product. It's definitely ish. It has a flavor of product. We're talking about code. Say it again.
It sounds like DevX, right?
It sounds like developer experience, exactly. I mean, I don't actually like the phrase developer experience. There's more customers of a platform than developers, but anyway, yes, it's very similar. We're curating experience, like that's our starting point, and as part of that experience curation, we might put some technology in there. We're almost certainly going to put some technology in there, but the point is that we're starting with the experience, just like a product. And this is like an enhancement to this. This is what I really want to focus in on tonight. The way in which an internal platform can act as an innovation engine, improving financial efficiency and revenue. So we can go beyond the sense of just a curated experience, which is still quite a passive thing, if you like, to actually something which drives innovation and potentially revenue. So we're kind of stepping up a little bit in terms of our game around how we run internal platforms. Let's look at a quick overview of Team Topologies. So we're starting with the concept of a stream-aligned team. A team aligns to the stream of value. It means we need to know what our value streams are. We need to know who our value consumers are. If you've got a very strong product approach in your organization, you've probably done that already. I would hope you've done that already. Otherwise, there's lots of building work and potentially there are people using the value. But anyway, one of the biggest surprises I've had in the last 6 years since the book was published is just how many organizations don't know who their value consumers are or don't really know their needs and haven't really thought about that and therefore don't know what the value streams are. We kind of assume that most organizations will be basically in that space and therefore could adopt the TT stuff fairly quickly. Turns out that it's not at all. So we've done a lot of work on some techniques and things to help organizations find the value streams, identify their value consumer and blah, blah, blah. And in a typical organization, the streams of value are quite long-lived, and therefore the team should be long-lived because we're aligning the team to the stream of value. So we're not just spinning up a team to do 3 weeks worth of work and then shutting it down. We're saying, well, let's align the team to that stream of the ongoing stream of value. And we're caring for and involving the service. There's no handoffs to other teams. We're deliberately not handing off. So this is a cross-functional team. Sometimes it's like a product team. The Gartner call it a fusion. The closest equivalent that Gartner talk about is a fusion team. Martin Kagan talks about empowered product teams and so on. Kind of similar idea. But we deliberately didn't use the word product. I'll tell you why. We did some work for Dyson, the hand dryer and the vacuum cleaner people. On site in the UK when they still had a UK presence, or significant UK presence, and product to them meant the physical thing, like the vacuum cleaner or the hand dryer, and they load of software around it, right? So in terms of managing it, in terms of controlling it from your phone and things, but they didn't see that part as a product, and so then we realised that there's probably loads of areas where the word product means so many different things, and using the word product would actually confuse. So I don't make any apologies for that. You won't see the word product like in the Team Topologies book in that context, but if that's what you call it inside your organization, because that you see it as a digital product, then see it as that. But it's deliberately called Streamline Team because it's slightly more generic. We're aligning to a stream of value. And there's loads of organizations now that are going, oh, I've heard that everything should be a product. Who's heard that inside an organization and gone, oh, no, it's going to be a disaster? Because not everything's a product, right? Lots of things benefit from product thinking, but not everything's a product. And these are small teams. So that's our starting point, because if we've got a small team, we've got high trust, we can make decisions very quickly. There's no handoffs to other teams. We can get changes out the door. We can get telemetry from the live environment back into our team. We can adjust, we can fix problems, and so on and so on.
How essential is this kind of handoffs to other teams? That's something I really struggle with in the context.
So how essential is this idea of no handoffs to other teams? So if we're happy to go a little bit slowly, then no handoff. Then having some handoffs is fine. But if we want to go really quickly, as in fast flow, then we want to avoid handoffs as much as possible, because any handoffs then are going to introduce delays. Any handoffs are going to introduce a drop in context between one team and another. And I mean, more generally, in some sectors, handoff is literally life and death. So in a A&E context or in a medical context, the more handoffs there are between one team and another, the more likely you are to die from a particular situation. So we're deliberately thinking about situations where we're trying to steward and care for that thing. It might be a digital service, or it might actually be something that's a bit more has a bit more what's the word? It's a bit more importance or a bit more impact or something. A bit more
high stakes.
High stakes, yeah, exactly. A bit more high stakes. It's not always possible, but what we're saying is, like, what would it take to get to the point where there is no handoff? And it might take some time to get there. But we try and work backwards from the point where let's imagine we've got this streamlined team and they've got a mix of skills, and there is no handoff. They can own the whole thing end to end. What must be true if that's the situation? And try and work backwards from there. Example, so traditionally you might have a development, testing, release, operation, right? So like we're trying to avoid that kind of handoff. But there are other kind of handoffs too. Maybe design as a handoff. It starts with design and then comes into development and so on. What would it take to not need to have handoffs? And use that as our kind of mental model for trying to work out where capability sits. The diagrams go left to right. There's like a flow of either changes or value going left to right. Anyone speak Arabic or Hebrew? One. Right, sorry. We had to pick a direction, right? So we've got a streamlined team at the top, and then there's three other types of things whose purpose is to improve flow and reduce cognitive load in those streamlined teams. And that's the only purpose for having these other types of team. In the book, we've got an enabling team in purple. So a team of experts. If they don't build anything, they uplift the capabilities in the streamlined team. They help to detect any capability gaps. They can help the team to get on board with the new way of working, and so on and so on. So they could have an enabling team around security compliance, or around design or UX or anything like this, or even how to do product. Like you could have some product specialists helping a team to understand, well, this is what a product is, because loads of people don't know. Like it's like value encapsulation. There's a lot of people don't get that. All they've been doing is like working on the next Jira ticket. And the idea of like thinking about something as a product might be new to them. So you can quite easily have an enabling team to uplift the skills and awareness around the organization about thinking about things in terms of product. Complicated subsystem is an interesting one. This is basically algorithmic complexity. If you've got algorithmic complexity like a video codec, or you've got, let's say, a financial market trading, regulatory reporting, or I don't know, give me some more algorithmic complexity examples. There's something to do with machine learning probably in there. It could be an insurance claim, an aspect of an insurance claim where there's a really complicated algorithm. And the point is, if we asked a streamlined team to do that thing, to work on that calculation, if that then would significantly reduce value flow or significantly increase cognitive load, then it might make sense to pull the algorithmic complexity out somewhere else, but not necessarily, but it might. Question?
Yeah, my question was coming from the complicated subteams. Would you specify that ICL as an enabling team within SME in different disciplines of that subject, or is that incorrect? Because the enabling team has already got SMEs where, because of the shape of it, you've got all SMEs that make the subject the reality.
Let me try and rephrase that. So, an enabling team is a group of experts in Team Topologies terminology. Enabling teams are a group of experts. They don't build anything, but they're uplifting capabilities and detecting capability gaps. For anyone who's in organization design, enabling team is a boundary spanning. Complicated subsystem does build something, very much builds something. It deals with that algorithmic complexity and makes something available. It could be like a code library. It could be an API. Something like that. They're making something available to be consumed by the streamlined team. So all of the complexity, all of the algorithmic awkwardness is inside this boundary, and the people they've got a maths PhD, or they know about video processing, or whatever it is that it needs to do, ML, machine learning, something. And they're effectively hiding all the complexity and exposing it in a way which is pleasant and exciting to consume by the streamlined team. Because again, the purpose of this complicated subsystem is to improve flow and reduce cognitive load in the streamlined team. And you know the 3D specs, 3D glasses with the red and the blue lenses. You've seen these things to look at like either the cinema or like those what do you call them, the stereoscopic images, right? So if you can do this for Team Topologies, and I've got product idea. Okay, this is my like crappy product idea. We're actually going to offer like a product like you can buy off the internet, and there'll be some like 3D specs in there so that you can literally put them on and make this metaphor real. So the two different lenses are fast flow value and cognitive load. You put the specs on and you see everything in that sense from that perspective. Does that answer the question enough?
Yeah, I could be here all day rambling about it.
And so can I.
I feel like maybe you take for granted maybe that when you said 8 people, New Zealand is such a small country that it's a whole team to get 8's big. So then I was always an SMA. So then I was like, might I consider the complicated subsections of this team as a member, or is my team a complicated subsection of the team? But,
Okay, so you're saying 8 people is large for a team here.
depends on what organization you're part of.
Okay. Yeah, fine. So when it says 8 people, that's the kind of limit. You could probably get away with a few fewer. If you're on call for 24/7 on call, then many fewer than, if you have fewer than 8, fewer than about 7 or 8, it gets a bit tricky with the rota. So that's what we're talking about. But so
one person dedicated for the complicated subset, or there's more specialized people in that subset.
So good question. So Team Topologies, it very much takes a team-centric approach. We're not talking about individuals, we're talking about teams. So if we've got an actual team here, then this is a true team. These people work together. These people start together, finish together. They might even literally do ensemble work together on the same problem at the same time, not trying to split it up into 8 different tasks. They've got 1 task at the same time, or maybe 2. But yeah, in a very small organization, let's say you've got, 7 people working here on the main product, and there's one particular tiny bit of algorithm which actually does need this high algorithm complexity. And let's say you've got that PhD in mathematics, you probably have, right? Tell me. Yeah. So let's say we pretend you've got a PhD in mathematics, you can do that thing, and by pulling that algorithmic complexity out, you're actually helping the streamline team to have a better value flow. What else? Right. So the platform at the bottom. Sorry, you had a question. Yes.
About the enabling team. So you said, for example, they might introduce new ways of working, but they are separate to the value stream. So how can they get the buy-in that they are not part of the team but trying to implement the new ways of working with the value stream?
Great question. So I think I'll address this a little bit later. So the question was, the enabling team is somewhat separate from the value stream. So how can we get the buy-in for them to do work and stuff? Because often it's hard to persuade people to pay for it and so on and so on. We'll look at that a little bit later. But let me talk about it after talking about platform. In the book, it talks about platform team. It's not actually a team. A platform is really grouping. It's really like a container for other types of team. Because inside a platform, we'd expect to see these types of entities, and you can keep zooming into a platform and seeing the same entities. It's fractal, it's self-similar. What we often see is that an enabling team is almost like a virtual team often, and it emerges from a platform or from a complicated subsystem. And the members, the people who are experts, because let's say they're experts about, let's say we've got a platform for cloud infrastructure, something boring. Cloud infrastructure platform, experts in helping the streamline teams to move from one cloud to another, or to adopt a new cloud service or something, whatever. So we might have an enabling team that kind of emerges out from here. The people put on a different hat, maybe literally put on a different hat, and hey, I'm now an enabling team for the next 3 days. We'll go and work with the streamline teams for a little bit. But then we'll understand what's needed, and then come back into the platform and actually do the work to update the services. So that's a quite a common pattern. Is effectively it's just it's a style of working more than anything else. We don't necessarily have a permanent enabling team. There is something I'll share in a minute which is different, but we don't necessarily have a permanent enabling team for every single thing. Sometimes it's just kind of like a style of interaction or style of working, effectively. Anthony, could I get a glass of water, Anthony? Is that all right? Thank you. Now, in the Team Topologies book, there's not just types of team. I mean, types of teams in itself is a bit radical, is what I've discovered. Like, it's a bit strange for some people. But we've also got styles of interaction. So this is not about structure now. This is about relationships between teams. It's about a relational aspect. Thank you very much. Which again is a little bit radical, and thank you. And some people find it a bit challenging. Anyway, we've defined 3 different ways of like working together between different teams. Collaboration and facilitating are temporary, so we'd only expect to see those 2 things for like a couple of days at a time, or maybe a week, maybe at most 2 weeks. Much longer than that, those interaction styles end up being like a crutch or a support or a walking frame. We don't really want that. We want the teams to be independent. Collaboration, 2 teams working together for a defined period to achieve something specific. Typically, we're trying to find a better like API or a better user experience or something like that. We're trying to discover that thing. Delivery speed goes down. Cognitive load goes up for a little period. The people we're working with seem a bit strange. Infrastructure people or those UX people are a bit weird, like they're from a different part of the organization. They speak in different. Anyway, we work together with them really closely because there's valuable, because we're going to discover, we're going to improve something, find a better way of interacting. Ideally, we get to a point where we can consume something as a service. That's what X as a service is there. In other words, one team provides something, another team consumes something. It could be a list of stuff, it could be a checklist, it could be an API, it could be a library, it could be a set of templates, whatever. The thing is, we're consuming it as a service, which means there's very little back and forth. The mental model for as a service, so I discovered, I think it was a couple of years ago, I discovered that some people's mental model of as a service is completely like 180 degrees away from where we intended. So the 2 different versions are a butler with a white glove or a concierge, and it says, and you say to them, he said, I'd like to have a little chocolate with a cherry on the top and a little bit of gold leaf and my name written in gold on the side. And they said, yes, sir, thank you, sir. Yes, I'll go and do that. And they go away, and he goes and gets that chocolate and makes it in the kitchen and brings it back and said, here you are, sir. There we go. And you go, thank you very much. Like, that kind of service is not what we're talking about. Absolutely not. What we're talking about is a vending machine. Someone's worked out what products to put there. We can just vend it ourselves. We don't need to speak to anyone, thank goodness. For technology, or some of the technologies anyway, I don't want to speak to people. So we vend it from the machine, and we're actually really empowered by that if you think about it. We're empowered because we're not waiting on someone else. We can make a decision. If we see the products that are there in the vending machine, we can get it ourselves. If we don't see the product we want, what are our options? Well, we're not going to wait around for the vending machine people to come and like fill it up. We're unblocked. We just go, we use what's there or not, and then go on our way. Now we can though have a conversation with the people who stocked the vending machine saying, I really think we should give me a flavor of potato chips that is really like funky. Oh, come on, something better than this. Something better than
Dill pickle.
Dill pickle, thank you, perfect. So let's say that you're like we really should have dill pickle like potato chips in the vending machine. And you provide some evidence. You say, well, look, I've actually done a survey, and there's like hundreds of people who really want dill pickle, potato chips. And then they say, okay, well, we'll try it, but we'll use one of the little slots in the vending machine. And they try it, and it turns out that people are buying it. So they use the evidence, and then eventually you become familiar with the fact that you're always going to be able to get dill pickle chips. But the point being, it's about that sort of vending machine self-service. There's no need for like a lengthy conversation. You just do it. You see it there. You vend it. You can have the conversation and say it would be great to have this thing, but that thing is not immediately provided like a chocolate. You have a asynchronous conversation, and then that thing might get provided. And this is how Amazon's been.
With a Butler analogy,
Yep.
I do collaboration versus as service, right? Like you're collaborating and you're asking certain requirements about specific things you want. The Butler goes away and gets that. Or in the case of like the owner of the vending machine, you're asking that person to get some new things. That's collaboration.
So yeah, so I suppose I would say that yes, with the with the vending machine thing, that the collaboration to work out what to persuade them what to offer might be a bit of might be kind of form of collaboration, exactly. But it's really important that extra service is self-service, it's immediate. There's no negotiation at that point. You either see what you like and get it, or you don't. And there's something I'll mention a little bit later. Actually, I've got a book here to recommend, which relates to exactly that. But it's crucial for scaling. The third one is then facilitating. So typically it's an enabling team, but it could be a different type of team, which is helping to uplift another team and increase their skills and things. So coaching and looking for capability gaps and things like that. So different ways of working. We're setting expectations about what it's going to feel like. So this is about emotions. And those of us from technology, we're not so familiar with emotions, so we have to encode it in a way which is a little bit more technical, like this. Okay, so that's fine. So we actually help to set expectations about what it's going to feel like to work with other people. So, like, if it has to come to this, that's fine. Let's just use this approach. And it seems to really help. There's a really nice quotation. In fact, can I put in? Oh, I'm sharing a tab, aren't I? It's not going to work. There's a really nice quotation from one of the case studies on the website, Team Topologies website, from a company called Foot Asylum. They do sports footwear and other sports clothes. It's like a retailer. And they talk about the fact that these team interaction modes here help the product people to work out how to line up different kind of interactions in advance based on the roadmap and a bunch of other things. So the product people really loved this approach for that reason. It helped give them the language to think through when they would need to talk to different parts of the organization. Any more questions about these? Does that make sense? I've got one over here.
With the vending machine therefore, are you confident to talk about EE, employment experience? If I'm not mistaken, that's what that is, within the way that you're trying to improve the way they efficiently, effectively perform the task quicker and faster to the tools they have with process they use, removing the barriers from your job, if I'm not mistaken.
What's the question? Sorry.
So that's employment experience.
Employment experience.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
How can we better serve you? The robot is more ad hoc, one time maybe, or twice a week, and then the vending machine is lifelong, that they can come back and consume automatically.
Yeah. So the vending machine is predictable, right? It's predictable. It's repeatable. Whereas the Butler is ad hoc and bespoke every time. So we want something that's more predictable, because the predictable thing is what empowers teams to be able to innovate properly and to be independent. It's a good question. So we've got a flow of value in these diagrams, left to right. Mary Poppendieck concept of cache is one way of looking at it, or it could be a set of needs delivering to a user, or it could be version control to live service, whatever. That's the flow, right? Depending on how you want to visualize it. So let's talk about how this works. And we've got a couple of stream-aligned teams. They're separate. They're working on slightly different things. The value flows all the way along. They're not handing off to anyone else. They're building and running that particular digital service. One of the teams' work becomes more successful. So the size of their stuff gets a bit bigger. So they're a little bit more overloaded now. They're like, oh, God, all this stuff to do. So what can we do? We can bring in an enabling team to facilitate them a little bit, help them understand the domain, or help them to understand the technology a bit. And they're like, okay, that feels a little bit better, but it's still quite a lot of stuff to do. They're almost like victims of their own success at this point. So actually, we're going to pull out some of that algorithmic complexity into a complicated subsystem team, maybe, if that's part of the problem. This is not the exact pattern to repeat, but this is just an example. Don't just take this cookie cutter. And that we're providing algorithmic complexity as a service. So it's like a vending machine service is easy to use, easy to consume. And they're happy again now. Great. That was what the problem was. It was that algorithmic complexity which was causing that problem in this particular case here. Now, eventually, that complicated system might get pulled into a bigger product or bigger product-ish thing here that's being managed. There's actually more than one service now. There's several services which are being provided from inside this platform grouping. And maybe at this particular point, the platform is collaborating with one of the streamlined teams around, for example, user experience, trying to improve the user experience of using some of these services. So this is just a snapshot of this particular week. that collaboration is happening. Next week, the collaboration might finish because they've improved how the service works. Make sense? So that's the kind of narrative we can use with these kind of diagrams, the team shapes and the team interactions. It's important that it's both together. It's not just a structure. It's the dynamic and it's the week by week or day by day interactions which this helps us to reason about.
I've never visualized complicated subsystem inside the platform itself. Is that a recent change, or is that intentional that complicated subsystems inside platform?
Great question. I've not planted these questions, by the way. We did meet beforehand, but we didn't have time to plant the questions.
I've read your book, so that's
I know.
All these questions are coming.
So that's actually one of the things that is in the original book, but we didn't emphasize enough. The fact that the platform is like fractal, if you like. You can zoom in and you can see different things inside it. So eventually you'd expect to see multiple different teams inside the area, depending on how big it is. And in fact, you can, like, let's say you can treat this platform, this might be the entirety of AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or something like this, right? You can represent the whole thing like that. And so inside there, if you zoomed in, you'd see different teams doing different things, providing services, right? Or it might be your internal platform.
Is that also long-lived, like the streamline teams? Like, what do you expect?
Well, if there's value that platform is providing, as long as that platform provides value, then you'd see it represented there. If there's value, if there's streamlined teams to accelerate, and if there's cognitive load to reduce, then you'd see a platform in place. So there we go. Multiple streamlined teams inside the platform, right? That's what I expect to see. Okay, so it provides a language and a way of talking about things which actually really helps us to reason about things from a product perspective, from a flow perspective, from a team perspective, cognitive load, a bunch of technology, and so on and so on.
So are you suggesting that these platform teams always emerge out of streamlined teams that are really close to a customer problem?
It's a good question. So we don't call them platform teams anymore. We might call it platform grouping. What we might talk about
groups emerge.
No, sure. Yeah. So we might say a team inside a platform.
Yeah.
I think it's a slight tweak of the terminology, but it's quite important. It's useful to think of it like that. So it's useful to think of the fact that we're starting with streamlined teams, and only if we need to pull out some cognitive load would we put a platform in place. That's it. Yeah.
Always have someone close to your company's customer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're part of the purpose. It's a good point. Part of the purpose of having streamlined teams is to get close to the customer. The customer is here, and we're as close as we can get to the customer using the streamlined teams.
Yeah, we would also need to have a value for the customer, right? So the streamlined teams are a must-have, and then everything else like platform grouping is an extra. Yeah, you will always have to create value. Like the flow value should always happen, otherwise your company doesn't exist. Right.
So, but it does presuppose that we know who our customers, we know who our value consumers are, and we know what their needs are, and that's a massive assumption, right? But let's assume that we've done that work, and so we know where to align the teams to. Okay, so the platform should accelerate the flow of value by reducing cognitive load for other teams. We've already seen this, right? But that little sequence of diagrams is just explores how we would talk about it, how we would actually map it out. These diagrams are created using fully open shapes. You'll find it on the website. So there's all kind of templates for different kind of tools and things, and the diagramming style's got some like a playbook and things with it as well. So platforms to create curated experience for the engineers, thinking about our customers. So these diagrams are always snapshots in time. They're never like a fixed, this is how our organization works. They should always be seen as like just a snapshot for this day or this week. And you can buy them online. We partnered with a company called Agile Station. All right, let's look at this in detail. Typical story. The organization has got multiple parallel, uncoordinated innovation initiatives that are financially inefficient. Once you get to a certain size of organization, this happens. A lot. This happens a lot. So let's say we've got a kind of flow-based organization like this, we've got multiple different streams of value. We've got a platformy thing in blue with some streams of value inside. There's some unconscious duplication happening. Like, people aren't deliberately being wasteful. They're just going, oh, well, we should need to innovate on this thing or that thing. You know, it might be, I don't know, it's ChatGPT or it's something. And the innovation is happening at multiple different points. And if you've got an organization of, you know, 50 different teams or 100 teams or 250 teams, like one organization we're working with at the moment, this stuff is absolutely going to happen. So, like, rapid innovation, great. Isolated innovation where people aren't learning and sharing, not so great. Duplicated innovation where it's a bit, don't really want that because we're paying for stuff which is not valuable. And then rapid isolated duplicated innovation. The CFO is going to come, she's going to say, what are you doing? There's absolutely no value in that at all. What we need is rapid harvested curated innovation. That's what we're trying to get to. And then everyone's happy. Well, most people. Some people are still grumpy always, but right. But we're trying to get to the point where a lot of people are happy. So how do we get there? We can use gardening as a mental model. And there's some foraging, harvesting, and recommoning. So we're going to plant some seeds. We're allowing different seeds to grow in different parts of the organization. Then we're going to harvest. We're going to find the fruits, if you like, the ones that look best, harvest them. Don't pick the mushrooms. You don't know. So foraging, finding the things that are out there, right? Harvesting and collecting the things together. And then a phrase that I came across from someone called Jay Bloom, but I think other people have used it too, which is recommoning. So making those things available to many, many people. And it's an innovation cycle. So we can pick any part of the cycle to start with, but let's say we start with foraging. So we start with foraging, we find some stuff that's useful, some innovations are working well. We harvest them. In other words, we say, okay, well, we'd like to offer them from an internal platform. And we kind of recom them, we make them available for other teams to use. And there's a situation here where precisely because we've foraged interesting things and we've harvested them and made them available by recommoning, the act of doing that fertilizes new products, right? Because there's now available new APIs, new data, new tooling, new this, new that actually fertilizes, that helps other teams to build new stuff, which they wouldn't be able to do before. We've got more in the vending machine model, we've got more vending machines and more variety of stuff in the vending machine, so people can like package that stuff together, put it in a bag, and sell that thing as a ready meal or sell it as a nice, you know. So this whole thing gets to a point where we're able to innovate way better. This decentralizing the innovation actually is what it's doing. So we've looked at a fairly simple Team Topologies map like this. Let's look at one which is a bit more involved. Don't worry about the detail. The point is, this is actually based on some real work that we did with a customer in the US earlier this year. So it might look like this. There's all kind of stuff happening. We've got some groupings of teams. So we've got these platform groupings here, and we've got even some stream-aligned team groupings. We've got a tiny little platform up here on the top right. This is a platform that's specific just to these couple of teams here, which is fine. It doesn't need to be centralized. It can be out there in very close to the customer, just in that P&L or just in that value stream there, which is to your point. And there's like a cycle of outreach. So the platform puts out a call. This diagram's awful, like you can't see anything. I apologize for that. But the platform puts out a call, says, "Hey, has anyone got anything in this area?" And it turns out this team up here has been doing something around that, and says, "Oh well, we've been doing a bit of work around that. We can tidy it up a little bit. We can package it." There's a bit of negotiation, and the platform inspects it. We shake hands over it. Okay, well, we'll take on that innovation. We'll bring it into the platform, package it up, and make it available for other teams to use. Obviously, the team that did that innovation in the first place would want to use it probably. there's a bit of collaboration to understand their needs. But it means that the platform, internal platform, does not need to do all innovation. We're expecting to pull it in from other places because it's happening already. So in a large organization, so we take the opportunity to look for it and make it available.
In a complex organization with multiple vendors, multiple teams doing this kind of thing, I see this as an ideal. Fantastic. Company I'm talking to at the moment has Deloitte, Infosys, just got rid of Capgemini. So it's a complex environment, and you've got politics and money.
Yeah.
In your experience, how does it work with multiple partners?
So let me delay answering that question until a few slides later, because I can talk about my experience in UK government where we did exactly this with about 18 different external suppliers back in 2018. It's a great question. It's a great question. I can talk about that in a bit. So crucially, platforms can choose whether or not to harvest or adopt a service from outside the platform. A streamlined team is never going to force a platform to adopt their thing. Hey, we've grown these mushrooms, or we've grown this, weird squash, or give me something else that they've grown, something that's really weird. I don't know, like what? They've got a cactus. The platform might say, I don't want a cactus. I'm not going to offer a cactus from my vending machine platform. It's completely inappropriate, and the streamlined team has to care for that cactus for as long as it needs to. But crucially, teams and services outside a platform can also choose whether or not to use a platform. It's optional. Like a vending machine, no one's going to force me to buy something from there. I can choose to do it, but I can choose not to do it as well. And that level of discipline is really important. We need to absolutely minimize the amount of time when people are forced to use something else. Sometimes, if it's about, for example, security, like a single sign-on, we might practically have to do that. But we need to absolutely make sure that the experience of using that service is absolutely first class. Otherwise, we're going to be slowing teams down. Otherwise, it's going to be disappointing and demoralizing.
The place where productizing the platform kind of makes more important. If the platform is something that the teams really wanted in the first place, and that analysis was done, then the platform becomes a product which these guys consume, or it has enough marketing for people to actually.
Well, exactly. Like if a product is good, then people adopt it, right? Yeah. I mean, that's literally part of the point of taking a product.
Don't grant monopolies.
Yeah, don't grab monopoly. Exactly. Like if a product is good, I mean, okay, there's some ways in which products get into the marketplace and get traction by other means, but generally speaking, in a proper market, then the good products will get the traction. So that's part of the discipline. Like we do the marketing, we articulate the value, we understand user needs, we understand user experience, all of that stuff. And if we've done that well, then probably, and we're targeting the right set of needs and things, and people can adopt it. So it's a good balance of discipline in there. So it's really carefully balanced between the platform is choosing whether to harvest services, and services can choose whether to use the platform. And that's a good, healthy balance and discipline that keeps things healthy from an ecosystem perspective. We need to think about the social dynamics for the platform as this innovation engine as well. Like hiring for adaptability first and technology second. So if you think about it, any digital technology you introduce now is likely to be obsolete in 5 years or 3 years or even 18 months. So we need to expect it to disappear in a short space of time. These timeframes are crazy, right? Because generally accepted accounting practice will do like a straight line amortization of like capital assets over, say, 3 years. So the technology is out of date before the accountants have finished doing their stuff. This is the first time in history, really, that's been a thing. So like, we're butting up against like 250 years of accounting practices that were designed to count cows in the field, and that now they just don't work with digital services. So we have to deal with this stuff. So the danger is if we put in, we need to make sure we're hiring for people who are happy to switch their focus away from this particular technology to something else. Otherwise, if they just want to focus on the technology that they're hired for, we're stuck with that thing for a long time, for far longer than we should have. So we need to avoid this kind of skills gravity. Lots of smart hiring, some cross training, maybe some incentives. It can be very small. It can be a $20 Amazon voucher, or maybe this country it's going to be $40. $20 isn't very much, is it? Like $40 Amazon voucher, something like this, just to nudge people in the right direction, in a more effective direction, away from this gravity well of old technologies. All right, fine. So we've got clear boundaries for flow. We've got limited interactions or carefully defined interactions between different teams and different parts of the organization deliberately. How are we actually going to create alignment across the organization? How do we actually learn from each other at speed? We're sort of not talking to each other. We just want things at vending machine. We're not talking to the person. There's no one selling anything at a vending machine. There's no one to talk to. And from some respects, that's good because it allows us to go more quickly, more independent. But how are we actually going to learn about practices and things like this? And how do we find the services to harvest and recommon? What does that look like? So here's our diagram again. We've got multiple independent flows and it's all fractal. We need something that we call active knowledge diffusion across the organization, actively diffusing knowledge and awareness across the organization. So my mental model is this. It's like an incense stick, but then with an electric fan behind it. So it's pushing that smell across the room, like nice smell across the room like this. So we can all smell it. Like we don't have to eat it right then and there. Say it again?
Unless it's the mushroom.
Unless it's a mushroom smell. So we're actively diffusing this knowledge across the team boundaries. Using all kind of things like these, internal conferences, public blogs, guilds, lectures. Who uses some of these techniques in your organization? Communities of practice and stuff like this, right? It's quite common. I've been doing this for ages, and I think this next slide, I've even written a book about it. It's also a book about internal tech conferences. If you're interested, go to internaltechconf.com. The thing is, these techniques here often are quite isolated. And often the funding dries up, or they're run by like one or two people, and then those people leave, or they get distracted, and then the stuff disappears, and then the organization wonders what went wrong. And it's like a garden. Like if you don't water it, if it's not thinking about how the things relate, it can end up drying up or dying. Now here's the thing. I ran these internal conferences with a small other group, but I was leading it at this train ticket retailer in the UK, like I mentioned. But there was a particular way that we were running these conferences. And after running about 5 of them, they were every 6 months for half a day. The organization at the time was like 450 people, so quite small. But the way in which we ran them was kind of, looking back, was quite opinionated. And the CEO at the time, Murray Hennessy, said this initiative around internal conferences has been the single most effective thing to align business and technology I have seen in this organization. Now, for an organization doing about 150 million pounds, so 300 million using dollars at the time, that was arguably worth like 5 million pounds, 10 million pounds, something like this, like 5, 10, 15% of the total revenue. Because if there was a misalignment, like a big investment in technology or a big missing initiative, that could cost literally millions of pounds or dollars, right? So for him to say that, it must have had a significant effect. Now, at the time, that was slightly accidental. I wasn't particularly reflecting on exactly what we were doing, but there's a bunch of things that we were doing, for things like deliberately bringing together the head of sales and the head of database and encouraging them to find common ground for a talk. They ended up doing a talk on like upgrading the Oracle database from this person. It's the most boring talk in the world, right? On paper, no one cares about upgrading Oracle databases. But it was actually one of the best talks because the way in which they did it was really funny, and they gave anecdotes, and they clearly working together. They did a live demo, and like head of legal and head of like marketing and the CEO, and a load of people were there clapping and laughing and really enjoying it. Massively powerful, right? You're literally on the stage, literally, this is pre-COVID, right? Literally on the stage, someone from database and someone from sales working together. They've discovered some stuff, they found some common ground. During the course of doing that thing, we created some alignment and awareness and engagement. So there's ways of running these kind of internal communities and groups and things, learning events, there's a real way to connect that to real value. And we did it with TELUS, which is a Canadian telecoms and healthcare corporation as well, more recently. So this active knowledge diffusion feels really, really important. We're building alignment, trust, and engagement, and finding services to harvest and recommon, because we'll go out there and find, oh, this team has done something amazing here. Well, let's talk to them. Let's bring that in to like our core platform that we're running as a product, make that available. Then the value is higher. More teams can use it. More teams are accelerated. The value of this internal platform is effectively increased because we've increased the reach of what we can do. We've scaled the ability of more teams to make use of that thing. So some real world examples then of this. Amazon and AWS is the kind of classic example. They've been doing this for absolutely ages. There's loads of stuff online about how they do it. I'm not going to explain this diagram. I just put it there to make me look clever. It's actually Wardley map. Who's familiar with Wardley mapping? Super cool tool. Like really, go and investigate it. It's basically, I would say, essential for any product person to get to understand what Wardley mapping is and how it gives you basically. It's like a crystal ball into the future. It helps you to actually see where to invest, and so it's like basically essential. Anyway, the Amazon's situational awareness is extremely high, and the way in which they build products actually helps them to gain metrics and a bunch of other things. This book here is worth looking at, Unbundling the Enterprise. But it actually talks about how Amazon does it in this book, Unbundling the Enterprise, APIs, optionality, and the science of happy accidents. It's about innovation at scale, enterprise scale, and how it's actually done. But part of it is that, you know, the stuff we talked about treating internal platforms as optional, defining an API, making it a vending machine. That's what Amazon has been doing for like 20 years. That's part of the reason for their growth. Spotify has done it. There's some little examples in here for some of their internal tools, providing like some pre-built stuff, some slight customization, and then just access to the API for more advanced users like this. So it's like a nice little variety of different approaches. Like just enough variety it's easy enough to provide and manage, but you're providing a variety for teams that are in a different stage of maturity. Singapore government has done some amazing stuff. I was out there recently. Who's been out in Singapore? I was out there recently talking to people. So we're going to have a case study in the second edition based on what the Singapore government or the GovTech part of Singapore government is doing. And they're using the Team Topologies principles to accelerate innovation by putting experts, what they call it forward deployment of capability out into different government agencies to uplift the capability so that they are ready to consume services from a vending machine style API. Because the agencies are not familiar with that way of working. So we have to get them ready to be able to use that kind of innovation. So it's a really, I mean, it's you know, there's 4.5 million citizens. It's quite impactful. So that story is coming out in September. But they've talked about it for quite a while. They've been doing this since I think 2018. I think aspects of this. So if you search for like Singapore GovTech forward deployment teams, you'll find a load of I think it's 3 or 4 articles online. This forward deployment capability is quite cool. Here's a stock market asset reporting stuff I talked about before. So there's an organization must report on effective asset usage, digital asset usage by industry sector. Specifically, if an asset was only used by one, so this particular organization works in healthcare, education, and financial services, I think. And if one of their assets was only used by one of these verticals, it wasn't seen as good by the stock market. I don't know the details, but I'm not in that space. But the idea was that can we get to use that asset, reuse the asset across these different industry sectors? That was the drive from a financial perspective. So we got this innovation cycle going on, harvesting, and therefore at some point this innovation, this is the same we saw before, right? The same terrible diagram. This actually then is helping to drive better asset reporting for stock market, whatever compliance, because now the asset's down in here and is now available to be used across different industry verticals. So this diagram comes out of the work that we did there, actually. So actually, we've got a better story for whoever's driving that stock market reporting compliance. I don't know who that is, CFO. I don't know who would COO. I don't know who would drive that. But whoever's driving that, we've actually got a better story at this point because of the way that we're doing our innovation, the way that we're thinking about managing products, aspects of products. So we just need to admit that this duplication is going to happen, and then do the harvesting and making it available again when it actually appears. I'll not tell that story. Right. So what can help with this platform as an innovation engine? So Wardley mapping we talked about already. Really worth having a look at. Like these basic, I can't imagine not using Wardley mapping to think about things now. Definitely worth having a look at if you've not seen that already. Another tool that's less well known, but it's actually a little bit easier to get to grips with, is something called core domain charts. Who's seen these before? I'm just interested. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, really interesting. Similar kind of concept to Wardley mapping, but slightly less scary. And it helps us to think about where we're going, where we should be investing our time and money, based on what's happening in the marketplace and what's happening in technology and a bunch of other things. So ideally, we're putting most of our effort and activity in the top right corner here, because that's where there's high complexity and high differentiation. So if there's high complexity, high differentiation, that's a hard problem to solve. Therefore, if we crack it, then we're going to have the biggest market share, and so on and so on. Like we've got a bit of a moat around our activity if we're up here. But over time, something that we started doing that was a differentiator might eventually actually just be something that's no longer differentiating the market, because at some point Amazon or someone is going to build that thing. So if we start to detect that Amazon's moving in that direction, we can't rely on that thing being a differentiator anymore. So we start to get some insight into how we might need to look for different differentiators in the marketplace. So this feels like a really important kind of product adjacent technique. It's influenced by Team Topologies as well, but in domain-driven design and things like that. Team Topologies obviously is helpful, particularly with enabling teams. And like an approach to active knowledge diffusion, the one that we have pulled together is one that we've kind of packaged is called Adapts Together. But anything which is really making that like seeking out and sharing and diffusing knowledge across the organization feels like a really important thing to do. We can't just leave it to chance. There's no water coolers anymore. We're all remote or partly remote. We have to make it an active thing and more directed approach to discovering what's out there. So here's our book, Unbundling the Enterprise. It's a really good read. I was skeptical at first. I didn't think I would enjoy the book, and I thought, I'm a complete convert now, which must mean it's a good book. It's probably a good book to give to someone who doesn't really understand software as well. If you need to get them to understand why APIs in particular are useful, then like a COO or someone, maybe they don't have the background, this could actually be quite good, because it does talk about like operational effectiveness and things like that. All right, let's have a look at the summary. So how can platform engineering or platforms in general drive innovation, efficiency, market advantage, and why should the COO or CFO care? These things, rethink platform fundamentals in terms of flow and innovation. That's what feels like is a valuable approach. Using gardening as a mental model, foraging, harvesting, and recommoning, and that's then going to fertilize new products because they're more available. Consider the social dynamics of the platform, skills, and things like that. And then we've had looks at some real world examples, particularly AWS, but there's loads more examples in the unbundling book. Lots of other examples in here. Organizations doing this stuff really well. So, great question. Thank you so much.